As we talk about the differences in the economy right now, one of the things that we acknowledge as being part of this Pocatello-Chubbuck community is that we don't participate in those drastic swings that larger metro areas participate in. Our incremental appreciation is typically smaller, as has been the depreciation, because we've seen some depreciation, not unlike all markets across the United States and the world at this point, but certainly not the 30 and 40% kind of depreciation that other communities have experienced. And so that investment as a potential homeowner is pretty sound still, and that's positive, especially if you can invest and build some equity based on a long-term interest rate of around 4%. As you are dealing with tenants who turn into home buyers, Mary, are there surprises at the closing table that you maybe haven't seen previously?
Well, you know, everybody's heard about the mortgage moratorium that several of the major national banks have called, and you know, that has affected some of the things at the closing table, but it also makes it more important now than ever for that buyer to get title insurance. There are foreclosures that have happened where all the I's haven't been dotted and T's crossed, and if a buyer gets to the table and purchases a home, their title insurance policy is going to protect them against loss because something might not have been done right through the foreclosure process. A lot of sellers and homeowners have had major financial struggles, and they've had judgments and liens filed against them, which subsequently attach to their real estate. So when they go to sell the house, there might be liens or judgments on that. Sometimes these liens and judgments aren't recorded exactly right, and they can be nicknames and initials and takeoffs and misspellings, and so not all the time are those things picked up in a title search. So if that should happen and the buyer comes to the table and buys the home, closes on it, everything is good, they think, and all of a sudden there's an undiscovered lien or judgment, that will probably be covered by their title insurance. So it's just more important now than ever, because the background of a property getting to the closing table is a much rockier path than it used to be. And so the title insurance becomes supremely important in protecting that buyer from the biggest investment they're likely to make in their lifetime.
It is a more complicated process from a real estate perspective, from a realtor perspective. I think that's one of the things that we notice, that we have to be more educated, and you have to know more as a financing professional, and you have to know how to direct us on a title insurance, because there are hurdles and pitfalls that we didn't have to face 3 years ago in a very dramatic way. So as you're out there making a decision about choosing to be a home buyer and a homeowner, it's important that you deal with professionals who can guide you and make that transition an educated, smooth one. Let's talk a minute about the pros and cons of home ownership. We all own homes. We typically all own properties other than our primary residences. You're the youngest of us, so you get to start. What was it that directed you to become from the renter status to a homeowner status? Were there some things that were positive?
Yeah, the top advantages that I felt were most important when deciding to be a homeowner versus a tenant was equity. When I pay my mortgage, I'm building equity in my house instead of building equity for the landlord or somebody else owning that property, and having the ability to build that equity, to have the tax deduction. And you know, rent payments aren't tax deductible, but with a mortgage, your interest and taxes can be. And finally, it's a fixed payment. When I have to go, you know, when I write my check every month for my mortgage, it's the same amount. And if you're re-signing leases and dealing with a landlord, oftentimes when you go to renegotiate that, they increase the rent.
That's true, and everything is cyclical, and as home values have decreased and people have had a shift in their lifestyles, those of us who are landlords have had an opportunity to increase our rents, because it is all based on supply and demand. There's no question about that. You mentioned, Mary, that you also own real estate investments and that you're a landlord. Talk to us a little bit about that perspective. And why that's a good thing. Why that's a good thing.
Well, I started buying rental properties when I was still a licensed real estate agent, and that was what my plan was for my retirement program. And so what's happened over these 30 years is my tenants have paid into my retirement program. I made my initial down payment, but the tenants are paying everything else. As you know, as I get the properties paid off and rolled into other properties and stuff. So that's worked really great for me. Not so great for the tenants, as much as I appreciate it. You know, so I was building my equities and my retirement portfolio while the tenants were just sending me money that really didn't benefit them in any way other than having a roof over their head.
Those of you that are Mary's tenants continue to be Mary's tenants.